Good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. and I'm going to call the meeting to order. I hope everyone is having fun. The fall is here and the winter is coming behind, right?
Yeah.
The sun is gone. Sometimes.
Beautiful day.
Today is a beautiful day. So I'm going to have Dawn. Can you hear me? I don't see you. All right, Dawn. Could you do the public comments, please?
Sure. Roll call and
Roll call first.
Roll call, yes.
Yeah.
okay. Start with roll call.
Yep.
Jerry Abrahams,
Here.
Cindy Botts, Alexandra Dahm, Wendy Clark, Phil DeFranza,
Here.
Heidi DeWeingart, Kylie Goslin,
Here.
Tim Hodges, Kathy McKinnon,
Here.
Commissioner Mosquera Bruno,
Here.
Commissioner Perez, Franklin Perry, Sarah Sanders,
Here.
Lisa Tupper Bates,
Here.
Greg Ugalde.
Here.
Commissioner Perez, are you with us? All right, we do have a quorum in attendance for the meeting.
Thank you, Dawn. And now can you do the public comments, please?
Absolutely. This is the only opportunity on the agenda for the public to provide comments. If you would like to provide a comment, please unmute yourself and state your name. To ensure that everyone has the opportunity, comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Hearing no comments, the public comment period has now ended. Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda is the report from our CEO. And go ahead, Nandini, to let us know all the work that you guys have been doing.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I actually was going to focus my remarks today on the annual conference at the NCSHA, which is the State Housing Finance Agency trade organization. You can read the written report in terms of some of the other updates. Some of our programs continue to make great progress, and we're, I think our numbers speak for themselves. But in terms of an update in terms of the NCSHA annual conference, I thought you might find it interesting in terms of what we learned there. So we had about several staff attend, as well as the commissioner, and it was our first in-person convening in 3 years. So it felt very historic from that perspective. It had the third largest attendance of HFA staff in 50 years since NCSHA has run the conference. It's really a great opportunity for our staff to network and learn about how others are doing things and being creative. So elections were held for the board of directors, NCSHA board of directors, and for various leadership positions on the board. I was a board member for the last 2 years, and I'm happy to report that I was reelected as a board member for the next 2 years. And a few of us were on panels. John Cabral was a discussion leader on a panel that talked about data analytics. Hazim was on a panel and moderated a panel on structuring bond issuances and accessing capital markets in volatile market environments. I was one of two panelists in a panel that focused on strategic planning, organizational development, and how to use technology to align with your strategic goals. I did discuss the work that the board and staff did in 2020 in developing our current strategic plan, as well as some of our organizational development work, the progress with those goals, as well as the work we're doing on our IT strategic plan. The sessions were very well attended. It showcased really the work that we're doing here in Connecticut, by CHFA staff. There was a session for executive directors to discuss the changes to document that NCSHA authors. It's called the Recommended Practices in Housing Credit Administration. It relates to the administration of the housing credit program by state housing allocating agencies. As you know, CHFA is one of those agencies, is the agency in Connecticut. It really has come on the heels of NCSHA and being very proactive about a lot of the cost escalations and all of the trouble that has ensued in since COVID for developing affordable housing. And they did extensive survey work of the development community, other industry groups, and state allocating agency staff, including CHFA. And then they took all of that survey work and distilled it into some discussion items around cost containment and how we might provide flexibility around certain program requirements to respond to periodic volatility in development and operating costs, more frequent updates of our development cost limits, review of construction and design standards for the purpose of streamlining and being able to reduce costs wherever possible, considering opportunities for value engineering in developments, as well as incentives for alternative construction methods. There was discussion around operating and replacement reserve standards, operating expense and vacancy rates that are assumed in underwriting. And so it was a great discussion, and changes to this recommended practices document is expected to really influence the review of housing credit related policy and program requirements and practices in the states. And I expect CHFA will be looking at how those have changed as well, and applying it to our programs in the coming months. That ends my CEO report for this month. I'm happy to take any questions from you all.
Any questions for Nandini? I have to say, I will recommend other board members to take the opportunity to join these conferences. Was very informative. The legislative updates were really good. And also, just for me, it gave me an opportunity to chat with other states on both FHAs and Department of Housing. Very good networking. So next time, I think the staff do send the information when this conference will happen. So maybe, Nandini, we can send schedules ahead of time so board members can consider going to this conference. I think the next one is in Boston.
Yes.
Yeah. Any questions?
I think Commissioner Perez has a question.
Commissioner.
Actually, it's not a question. It's when attendance was taken, I had stepped away to take a phone call. So that's why the record to reflect I'm in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Don, you got that?
I think Greg has a question.
Greg?
I'm curious, how do you feel that Connecticut stacks up with your peers? You know, when you look around the room and we're giving reports and on panels, it seems like our sophistication level and how we, you know, our influence in the marketplace, we're probably pretty influential at these meetings, correct?
Yes, I have to say that I had a lot of kudos on the work that we're doing. The staff, Hazin is very well known, and everybody, I think, desires to have a Hazin in their shop. And we say, no, don't come even close. Or Nandini, everybody has a lot of respect for our staff and for the work that we're doing in Connecticut. So it was very nice to hear from people that I would just pass by and they saw that I was from Connecticut. So I was very happy. Thank you, Greg, for that. But thank you for asking, because that was one of the things that I took out of the conference, is that many people just stop and talk and chat and were telling us how we were considered one of the top FHAs around the country. All right, moving on with our agenda. Hazin, you're going to present a resolution from the Finance Committee?
Yes. So good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. The resolution before you is to authorize CHFA to adopt a new indenture for its multifamily and single-family programs. In addition, it will allow for an issuance up to 150 million under the indenture to finance such programs. The consideration for a new indenture came forward after CHFA conducted a capital study and revised its strategic plan in 2020. In designing the new indenture, CHFA took the approach that the new indenture shall not replace the existing general resolution, but merely to supplement it. In doing so, the new indenture will not carry CHFA's general obligation or the state's special capital reserve fund, and the loans financed under the new indenture will be federally insured or insured by a government-sponsored enterprise like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Additionally, the new indenture allows CHFA more flexibility to tailor the offering based on the needs of the investor or the market. CHFA expects to issue its first bond in early 2023. The resolution was presented to Finance Committee, and the committee had plenty of questions regarding the difference between the current resolution, the general resolution, and the new indenture, the reason behind creating the indenture, the type of financing that goes with the indenture, the quality of credit for the indenture, CHFA's control over the financing, and finally also talking about CHFA's risk. Do want to also point out that Sarah, representing the Treasurer's Office, also would like to state in the minutes that the Treasurer's Office will work closely with CHFA to finalize certain terms of the indenture to ensure that it conforms with the state's understanding and it will not incur additional risk to the state. So the resolution was approved unanimously by the committee, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have this time.
Any questions for Hazin? Can I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. Any further questions? Hearing none. Dawn, could you please do the roll call?
Absolutely. Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Cindy Butts, Alexandra Dahm, Phil DeFranzo,
Aye.
Heidi DeWeingart, Kylie Goslin,
Yes.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Commissioner Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugalde.
Aye.
The vote passes unanimously.
Motion carries. Thank you, Dawn. The Mortgage Committee has 2 action items. And Pat Giuliano, are you going to present? I cannot see you.
I am. I'm right here.
Here you are.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. On Tuesday, members of multifamily underwriting presented 2 recommendations to amend prior board resolutions to the Mortgage Committee. The first recommendation was presented by Carol Gooden, who recommended amending the April 2022 board resolution for Antillian Manor in New Haven. This was a slight reconfiguration of the debt structure. The changes included an increase in the construction loan of $115,000, a decrease in the permanent loan of $615,000, and a new CMF Capital Magnet Fund loan of $500,000. The recommendation did not change the original maximum loan amount of $1,600,000 as approved in the April board resolution. The recommendation was approved unanimously, and with your approval today, Antillian is set to close on October 28th. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm going to ask first for a motion. We'll do the question in the motion to approve the resolution.
Make a motion to pass the motion.
A motion to pass the
To
resolution.
pass the,
Yes.
pass
Can I have
the
a
resolution. Sorry.
second? Can I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All right, Dawn, do your thing.
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Alexander Dahm, Phil DeFranco,
Aye.
Kylie Gosselin,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Commissioner Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Yes.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugalde.
Aye.
The vote passes unanimously.
Thank you. Motion carries. Pat, do you have another resolution that you're going to
Yes,
present?
Yes, please. The second recommendation was presented by Michelle Onofrio, who recommended an amendment of the resolution adopted in May of 2018 and then subsequently amended in March of 2022 for St. Mary's Place in New London. The recommendation was to extend the maturity date of both the $3.8 million construction loan and the $425,000 additional construction loan by 6 months to provide sufficient time to finalize the closing. In the past few weeks, the team has made great progress and all the closing conditions have now been met. And we anticipate a closing of St. Mary by the end of the year. The recommendation was unanimously approved by the committee, with the committee asking that if this does not close by the end of the year, that we come back and report on it in January. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the resolution. Can I have a second?
So moved.
Any questions for Pat?
What was it's Phil DeFranco. What was the delay for the in the closing of the construction loan? Like, what caused the delay?
Pat?
Michelle, are you on?
Yeah, I can take that. Sure. There were some various construction unforeseen delays during construction at the onset, and unfortunately, COVID exacerbated that problem because COVID hit about a year later. So there were some significant delays in the timing of the construction. We lost construction staff, but we are at a point now where the only requirement left to get the capital contribution that will pay CHFA off is the SHPO Part 5. The project is fully occupied and up and running.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question? Okay, Don?
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Phil DeFranco.
Aye.
Kylie Goslin,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Sorry, aye.
thank you. Commissioner Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Yes.
Lisa Tupper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Agalde.
Aye.
Vote passes unanimously.
Thank you, Don. Motion carries. And thank you, Pat.
Thank you all.
Next, we have Hazin. Hazin, you're going to present the 2023 draft budget and plan of operations.
Yes. So good morning, everybody. It's that time of the year again. So if you can bear with me for about 10 minutes, I would like to summarize for the board what we expect would be our recommendation for the 2023 annual budget. So for those members who are not familiar with the process, the way that we designed this presentation is to break it down into multiple components. So the first piece is just to describe that we are taking a zero-based approach. What it means is on an annual basis, we start from zero, and then we basically identify what will be needed for budget to pay for our expenses. Don, you can scroll down. Okay, so then the next component is every year we will provide a highlight of for what happened throughout the year. So we cut it off through September 30th because that's the most recent information that we have. So section 1 under the highlights is just to talk about interest rate. No surprise there. There's all the increase that the Fed has undertaken throughout, and next week there will be a Fed meeting. And our expectation is the market has already priced in that the Fed is going to increase the Fed fund rate by another 75 basis points. Section 2 or item number 2, it talks about the amount of bonds. We projected a certain amount for the prior year to go into this year. So we essentially said 696. And then we describe what we did through September 30th and what we expect to do before year end. Item number 3, it talks about private activity bond volume cap. Now, this is important because we utilize private activity to issue tax-exempt bonds. The amount of private activity that we get each year is determined by the Fed and is based on per capita, which is the state population. Number 4 is always important to talk about balance sheet or the asset that we are financing, because that's how we make our income. So section 4 or item 4 is to talk about that. Number 5 is the breakdown of the asset. So we describe about the number of loans that we have made and then what goes into it for single family. Number 6, same thing, but now we are focusing on multifamily. Number 7, Don, you can scroll down, talks about the other programs that we're running, which is the CMF, along with number 8, which is the state programs. Number 9, we talk about our P&L. And number 10 is just trying to compare from an actual expenses, the G&A, which is the general and administrative. So we'll go to the next one. So now we get into the cross of the budget. So we are proposing a budget not to exceed 45 million. And then we broke it down, the budget, into 2 categories, salaries and benefits, along with G&A, general and administrative. And then we also make a comparison to the prior year. Number 2, we are pointing out about the cost for fringe benefits. Number 3, we talked about any CapEx that we would like to set aside for our organization. Number 4 is to try to eliminate the noise because CapEx can skew the numbers. So we are describing that. Number 5, we're talking about what we expect to do for the new year, the amount of production, the amount of volume cap, so on and so forth. Number 6, we talk about the amount of bonds that we want to do. Number 7 is what we think the P&L is going to be. And number 8 is just trying to measure our expenses over the years. And then as you scroll down, there's also a description about what we would like to inform the board of future investments that we need to what do you call that? We need to assess and pay for to ensure that we keep up to date for our programs. And then you go to the next page, and then I'm going to go very quickly here. So for you to have the budget, you also have to talk about the resources. So we are listing under the lending plan the amount of resources that we have. So currently everything is in brackets because we do need to close the month of October before we can fill everything in. The first one is talking about just the overall aggregate amount. Then we talk about number 2 on the multifamily programs. Number 3, we talk about the single family program resources. Number 4, we talk about our internal capacity using ITA to supplement both programs. Number 5, we talk about the opportunity fund. Number 6 and number 7, we talk back about what other items that we would do and what the impact will have to the balance sheet. And then last but not least, at least under this particular category, this is something that we are required to do. And then the general resolution, which is our workhorse, it does require us to provide a certification to the state that the reserve fund is fully funded. And if it is, then we can deploy funds not required to satisfy the bond requirements into the ITA along with the opportunity fund. So again, the numbers are still in brackets. Go to the next page. So this is essentially is what I just described in narrative, but now we're talking about in numbers, in columns, and in rows. So you have the revenues, which comprises of loans, investments, and fees. And then you have expenses. You have the big one, of course, is bond interest expense, servicing fee. The operating budget, like I mentioned, 45 million. And then you have other expenses, ancillary expenses, and then you get to the net income, and then you get to other expenses such as bond cost of issuance and depreciation. So here is the breakdown of the 45 million. You can see that there's all the line of the items to reflect what makes the 45 million. The biggest category is personnel. Then you have professional services, facilities, office expenses, other expenses, bond-related expenses. And then when you go to the next page, you have the description about the capital budget that I mentioned, or the CapEx. And then you go to the next page. You can scroll down. So this is just, again, to recap, we talked about the amount of bonds. You have to show the amount of bonds that we have issued by single family, multifamily. There's all the columns that would reflect the use of private activity or tax exempt or private activity tax exempt bond volume cap. And then underneath, we show the listing of the projects for multifamily that did utilize the private activity. We go down to the next page. We have 3 charts here to show the program assets. We show about the actual based on our financial in comparison to the budget over the last 5 years. And then we break it down, the expenditure using a pie chart to show what is the main drivers that drives the operating budget. Then we go to the next page. We have the lending plan. I described again before about the resources. So this is the listing of resources. It gets adjusted once we close out the October. And once the IRS, along with the Census Bureau, finalize their information, so this gets finalized in January of every year. So if you look at the resolution that was presented in January, there's basically a resolution to approve the lending plan and the carry forward. So you go to the next page. So then we talk about explanation. So we had the narrative to talk about the big picture, what transpired, and then what we planned, and then we had the grid. And now is just to explain a bit more detail what happened under each subcategory. So you have the interest on loans, you have the information on expenses. So this follows very closely, so line by line. So you will not like get out of place. It's just that you do need to follow and look at the proposed budget. So this explanation goes hand in hand. And then when we compare it to actual, we are tying it to the report that Allison provides to Finance Committee on a monthly basis. So we have all this information, so feel free to read it at your leisure about what happened. Next page. So the first few things is all about revenues. So we can go on, Don. And then we talk about the bonds, and then we talk about operating. And now we get into the budget, the 45. So there's a lot of information here about what we're making assumption about the FTEs, about any compensation, fringe, in comparison to prior years. And then we get into the G&A. We talk about all the items, why it went up, why it went down, why we pick what we pick, and so on and so forth. So that's essentially is the draft budget for 23. Again, in terms of the format is essentially similar, but we do tweak the narrative to reflect what we expect going into 2023. And the plan is, this is a draft. We are looking to finalize and to get approval from the board at the November meeting. So between now and prior to us finalizing, we'll be happy to accept any questions, comments, and we'll take it from there. So Commissioner, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Hazin. Very well detailed. A lot of information that we need to go over, and anybody has any questions, because you can give comments now, but also you can through now to the November meeting, you can also send emails to Hazin with questions about the budget. Greg, you have a question?
Yes, Hazim, that was a great outline. Curious, is there anything coming out of the pandemic, and it's quite detailed, is there anything that jumps out at you or that there's been discussions about that you'd like to have us take a look at, dig into, any concerns?
So there is narrative in the presentation that talks about the pandemic, where we are adjusting certain line items down because of our administration of current federal resources. So that there is something like that. There's also a recommendation to keep the DAP interest rate at 1% to deal with the rising interest rate and to continue to help first-time home buyers. I think when we were designing this, the budget itself, I think it is adequate and it can deal with any shocks that that may happen in 2023. The concern that I had leading up to this was to figure out where the market was going to be. So that was a bit more difficult because the market has been more volatile than usual. Even today, people are speculating that the Fed may take its foot off the accelerator for the December meeting, so there's some rally in the equity market, but then the bond market is reacting another way. So those things may tinker or may impact our investment income, may impact our production. But the way that we have been managing this whole process has been, we definitely like to keep the board and the committees informed, instead of waiting until the next October and say, hey, you know what, we are in trouble. So we do keep touch with committee and the board, and if necessary, if it requires some adjustments or anything of that sort, we definitely will bring it to the board's attention. Commissioner Perez, I see your hand up.
Yes, my question has to do with, and again, I haven't analyzed this in great detail because, we basically has got it. But my question is, due to the economic conditions that we're going through and the potential for some of our developments, the tenants not paying rent and impacting their income, which then impacts them paying us. Have we done an analysis of that and we've taken that into account in those numbers? I mean, I imagine the answer is yes, but I don't want to assume.
Yeah, so if it's multifamily, that is something that our multifamily asset management group is monitoring. Our team do keep tabs with the property managers to ensure that if in an event that there's some difficulties, we get to know about it. I think the question is more about whether or not they proactively would reach out to us to manage. But if you remember during COVID, when everyone faced that difficulty of making rent payment, we did establish a forbearance program. So I think it is one of those things where we do have an infrastructure in place, but it all comes down to what are we talking about. So we have the interaction side of the business where our asset management is working with property managers. But then on the financing side, if we do see delinquencies or in relation to the inability of tenants to pay the rents that impacts the project's ability to make mortgage payments, then we would get involved and trying to make sure that how the reason behind the failure to make the payments, and whether or not we have the means and the ways to come to a favorable solution for both sides. On the single family side, and I know that Commissioner, you didn't ask for single family, but on the single family side or homeownership, we've always had a process where we do provide homeowners assistance if they come across or if they are facing challenges. In addition to all the federal programs or the state programs that we have, we do have a budget solely to provide counseling and any type of financial fitness and financial assistance relating to home buyers or homeowners facing financial difficulties. So that's actually a line item solely just to address that.
Well, I thank you for the refresher on our process when it goes wrong, but that's not what I was getting at. So let me give you a little more detail. Like, for instance, one of the reasons during COVID, which in my opinion, and not everybody may agree on this, that the impact was not as bad is because of the amount of money from the federal government and the state to help people pay rent, right? It was in a million, tens of millions, right? Well, that money is not going to be there forever, right? So people have it. So yes, we had a plan in case things went wrong, right? But that plan really was called big time, the extra $40-50 million that we got on the street to help people pay rent. That's not going to go around forever. So my point is, have we analyzed not what we're going to do once we know they have a problem, but if there's a problem, does our financials have enough cushion that if we have to take a loss, right, or increase our reserves, not because of anything anybody did bad, it's just when you don't have 40, whatever the number is, and Commissioner Mascara will not know those numbers better than I would, whatever it was, 30, 40, $50 million in rent assistance, that it may not be there in the future,
Right. So if you are asking from that standpoint, so I'll answer it from a financial standpoint. So
That's what I was looking at. That's what I was
Okay.
looking for. That. Not
Okay.
necessarily.
Understood.
Yeah.
So on our side, on our side of the ledger, we do go through the process where we have to make sure that there's enough capital or sufficiency to ensure that we can satisfy any kind of distress or depression. And that's part of the reason, or a very strong part of the reason as to why we remain as AAA. And we have had this AAA even during the financial crisis back in 2008. And CHFA was the first HFA in the country to issue bonds post 2008 because of the strength of the credit. So we continue to retain that asset. And that's the reason as to why when you go through the report, I emphasize on the size of the program assets in relation to the debt. Because the excess asset would be the one that will be required if in an event that we face a catastrophe. And not to say that we will, but if in an event that we do face a meltdown or something happened to the whole asset, that we do have sufficient reserve to cover to ensure that we can ride it out.
Thank you, Hazim. Any other questions? All right. As I mentioned before, any questions that you may have after you have those reading through the weekends, please let Hazim know. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move, Jerry.
Have a second?
Second,
John?
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Phil DeFranco,
Aye.
Kylie Goslin,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Kathy, would you say that one more time?
Aye. Sorry.
That's all right,
With
thank
my
you.
mute button here.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugalde.
aye.
Vote passes unanimously.
Thank you, Don. Don, you're gonna have to explain this to us. We're gonna go into an executive session. We have one item that we need to discuss in executive session. How are we going to do this?
Absolutely. So Commissioner, I have you set up into a breakout room for the 10 board members that are present today, and then the CHFA staff that are required. And so whenever you're ready, I will open that room. It will give you a little pop-up box and you can say, whatever it says, go to room or yes, or whatever, allow that. And when you get there, I believe you should have a total of 16 people. Any questions about how that works?
I think I got it.
Okay.
Unless anybody has a question before I make a motion to go into executive session. All right. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Have a second.
I'll second.
Any questions?
Aren't we required to send the record the reason why we going into executive section for the purpose of?
For the purpose of giving an update to the board and to come up with some strategy on one of our, on the finance of Cherry Street Loft is a development that is financed by CHFA and it's on the agenda.
I agree, but I mean,
Why does that have to go into an executive session?
I'm going to defer to Terry Calderon, who's on the call, our general counsel. Terry, can you please speak to that?
Yes, we have a pending claim against them, so it's more appropriate to speak about that outside of the ear of the public.
I mean, I wasn't questioning that should we go or not. I mean, I understand pending litigation is reasonable, is one of the reasons you could go into executive session. I was only suggesting that we should say it in the record. So,
Yes,
Okay,
that's all.
Commissioner, yes, you're correct about that. It should be-
That's all.
Yes.
thank you. Any other question? Dawn, could you please do the roll call?
Absolutely. Chair Abrahams,
Aye.
just to make sure no one has joined us, Cindy Butts, Alexandra Dahm, Wendy Clark, Phil DeFranco,
Aye.
Heidi DeWeinger, Kylie Gosselin,
Aye.
Tim Hodges, Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Commissioner Mascaro Bruno,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Lisa Tupper Bates,
Aye.
Greg Ugalde.
Aye.
Okay, so Dawn, go ahead. Thank you. All right, and before we adjourn the meeting, can we have, anybody has any questions, any comments, anything that you would like for us to answer for now? Yes.
I do. I've noticed being a lender, I've noticed a increase in turn times for underwriting based off of the success of the time to own program. And I wondered what CHFA is doing to help with that, just because I'm starting to get feedback from realtors that they're not accepting, or they're hesitant to accept CHFA offers because of the delay in the turn time and underwriting. So I just wanted to know, I mean, hey, listen, it's a great thing. The program is so successful, and I understand the management of that, the operations, but I just wanted to know what thoughts you had of that.
Thank you, Phil. I had that question to staff because somebody approached me with the same issue. Nandini, do you want to respond to that, or Hazin?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So I think, so there are a couple of things we're looking at. So we had looked at, one of the things we've been researching, Phil, is looking at maybe a more streamlined way to do the underwrite. You know, we do a full underwrite now, and our lenders, you know, have liked that because they feel, you know, they've gotten to a sort of a comfortable space with CHFA doing a full underwrite. But if there's ways we can streamline that, we're looking at that right now. We understand time is of the essence, but we have to go, you know, run through a couple hoops in order to make sure that at the end of the day, the loans are still eligible from a tax exemption perspective for our bonding. And then another thing we're looking at is the framework for, to the extent the delays are related to our inability to provide a commitment quickly enough, we are looking at the compensation structure as well. So more to come. I appreciate your question, and we're certainly very concerned about it as well.
Like I said, it's you're a victim of the success of the program. I mean, it's phenomenal. So, but it's just, I just hate the idea, like the mission of all of our is to try to, and I hate when I hear realtors saying that. It just drives me crazy. But anyway.
No, we understand, and we're working as hard and quickly as we can to bring some relief to the pipeline. Thank you for asking.
Thanks.
So, in any change we may make,
We'll communicate
we will communicate it right away, though, because that's Commissioner Paris.
I mean, I just want to suggest that, and it may not be applicable to this particular program right away, but there have been some new innovations on underwriting that we may be familiar with, we may not be familiar with, you know, as CHFA, that maybe Phil can help with, or other financial institutions that do underwriting. there's, automation now to verify people's income, right? So you don't have to wait a week for a person to send you a pay stub or a W-2. There may be other innovations through automation that down the road we can use to expedite not only this particular program, but any future program. So my suggestion is, if you're already doing it, great. Not surprised. If you're not, at some point, somebody may want to be assigned to reach out to some of the, bigger entities that do this type of loan, that do lending, and see if there's any improvements, best practice that CHFA can implement.
Happy to research that, Commissioner, and work with Phil and other parters.
Yeah.
And I want to say, look, I don't think the system prior to time to own, there was no complaints. I just think because of the success to time to own, it just, which, like I said, it's like being a victim of your own success. So I don't know.
Right,
I
but
don't know
Phil,
if, like,
you know
yeah.
very well there's some automation out there that could expedite
Oh,
the process. It's not because
yeah.
anybody's doing anything wrong. You'll be able to handle a lot bigger
Correct.
volume,
Yeah.
faster. I'm not being critical. I'm actually saying
I agree.
that technology, in some cases, is starting to catch up with reality, right?
Yeah. Got it.
It may be worth us looking into it, right? I'm
Okay.
not saying that CHFA has done anything wrong, and I understand the success, right? And that's the reason why when you have that kind of success and you cannot step up fast enough, you look at other alternatives, right?
Yeah, and staff is looking. Lisa, they have one person that she's working with, Terry, because there are some little bit of legal issues that I understand are going on, but definitely within, this week, next week, we should be able to make those changes that the staff is recommending. So,
But even if you do for
really-
future programs, may be worthwhile looking at any automation that we can do, right? Or any new best practices out there. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
You know what? Let's tickle my funny bone, not yes, and I'll move on. If you don't do it,
All right.
I'll
Any
say I told you
other
to do it, you didn't do it, right?
any other question or comments? Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Have a second.
First motion today.
First motion. Have a second. I know you guys want to stay, but can I have a second? Thank you, Lisa. Any other comments? All right, so can you all raise your hand if you don't want to stay in this meeting?
Great job,
Thank
Don,
you.
getting us into executive session. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Don, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right,
Bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.